were remapped by Kevin. So they went back with students and there was a lot of work done and came out. Now, out of all the group, 9 were mapped directly by WSPs who had the capability. In this case, we are talking of Nanyuki Water. Nanyuki Water has been very strong, and it was mentioned yesterday that they did a good job. Now, let us look beyond this way. And this is why it's very important, especially for water utility managers and people who are going to follow in future. Let us see. 50% of the 32 are still ongoing with mapping. Now, I told you that the infrastructure mapping was once, but there was the customer mapping, which is going on continuously. Any new connection they make, they map. So 50% of them have been going on with mapping. And now we are followed to see, out of that 50%, out of the 32, how many have the Kerry interns been contributing directly to the mapping? It is 25%. So there, the people on the ground, we found water committees, we find an old man of 70 years. He has a mobile phone, he has a smartphone, he doesn't know how to map, but he has it. So essentially, what we are seeing and looking at is a scenario where these 25%, which are continuously being mapped by the interns from Wednesday next week, when the interns exit, what is going to happen to that continued mapping? And we are seeing beyond June, which is end of next week, 25% of the 32 will continue mapping. So this is very important because it means that if we are investing in this direction, we also have to look beyond. And the question of capacity building that has been said again and again, we must bring it very strongly to reach that. But then, just as I close, I wanted to show you very quickly how the different counties behaved. This is very exciting because if you look at the counties, look at the point, just the last one here, beyond June, how many counties are likely to continue to be mapping on Thursday next week? Look at this is Kwale. Kwale will not continue mapping after Thursday. It's good to note because we are taking it that this GIS is useful all the time. Ethiopia will continue mapping 57% of all the utilities. They have the capacity to continue on Thursday. Migori is likely to continue 17%, but it's only one project called Nyasare. And for those of you who go to Migori, who know Migori very well, as you enter Migori, there's a utility, a community water utility who's been there since 1992. They've been doing a good job. They have a lot of capacity. They are the ones that will continue here. Then we have Nandi. Nandi, there will be nobody continue to map on Thursday next week. So these are very important points because in the end, when we work so hard, there is that bit that we are now looking back as a reflection. What should be put there to strengthen it in the long run? And that's the question I remember I was going to ask yesterday to one of the presenters. What happens beyond the project? And then we look at Varakanili is one of the projects, and we think that 60% of them will continue. And then we have Narok. Narok has not finished their project. So these are the 6 counties that we have dealt with, and it's very good to give back feedback at the end of the day that this is very important information for the donors. I'd like to carry over because there was a lot of expectation at the start, and we expect that this expectation should not go to waste. There is a lesson learned. This project was a pilot, and before, just as I close here, I'll tell you that it wasn't cheap to run this show. The minimum cost was 12.5 million shillings to map all these utilities. Part of this cost may have to be added. That was already a cost that was set out in 2017. So today as we speak, if you do it again, most likely to come to 15 million, but it is worth it to map 32 utilities with this money because none of them was mapped. They are all mapped again. So thank you very much. I'm sure that as we continue to discuss, I would like to just introduce possibly Ibrahim can stand. He has been the man, he has worked very, very closely with this exercise. I'm a technical advisor and I'll leave on Wednesday. So from Wednesday, if you come to the trust fund, you'll find these men. and he will give you all the one that is there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Our next presentation will be from Kofi, followed by Esri. You get ready? Esri team, you get ready? Can somebody help me to screen? I don't know how I want to show when I do it's brown. It's unable to read from the hard disk. Usually, I don't know, it's fine. Acha tumcopy, tuitoe hard disk tuweke kwa form so that we can hapa kwa desktop now. Now close all these. Copy shika hiyo click here, copy that one. Paste it. Now cancel all this. So cancel this. It's ready. It's not saved it. Now we come on this one. So going to work.
So my name is Stephen Kiam. I'm presenting on behalf of a group of scientists from Kenya Forestry Research Institute on a work that we did on aerial seeding in support of restoration of degraded landscapes in Kenya. I will go straight to the point, but allow me to only mention that given the work that was done in 2016 by a number of state agencies, it was marked that about 53 million hectares of our landscape is severely degraded. And out of those 53 million hectares, and in response to the whole challenge where the countries of the world were supposed to commit towards restoration, the government of Kenya committed 5.1 million hectares. So, if we are to restore 5.1 million hectares, and given that 1 hectare to restore using conventional method of raising seedlings and planting them on the ground, it takes around 80,000 Kenya shillings to raise seedlings and restore 1 hectare. And then if you do very well in a given year, you are able possibly to restore 5,000 hectares. That tells you are likely to spend 1,000 years. Isn't it? 5.1 million divided by 5,000, that translates to 1,000 years to cover 5.1 million hectares. And given that the bond challenge already is up to 2030, so it's not likely for us to use the normal restoration method to restore even the target that we already committed ourselves. And therefore, aerial seeding was opted as a technique to fast-track the restoration as an alternative to using the ground-based method. Now, as the word goes, it is a technique of dropping the seeds on your disturbed area and waiting for them now to take the natural course of regeneration. It was the first time it was used in Kenya, this time piloted in Masai Mara Forest. Many of you have heard about Masai Mara Complex, which is the biggest actually in East Africa. This was its former relic. And most of the areas, as you will see, have been lost, perhaps by way of excision, legal excision, where the land changes from forest to other activity. But some other areas have been lost by way of illegal, encroachment. And in Masai Mara is a case where a huge area was lost through illegal excision. People just go into the forest and they get a portion and they convert it to agriculture. This is Masai Mara down south, that is almost, we may say, in the east. The area that is marked in blue is where the campaign was being done to reclaim that portion from illegal encroachment and restore it back. And this is now where we were doing the aerial seeding. Kevin was doing the lead, and these were basically the activity, starting with the site mapping and sensitization of the stakeholders, determining the species that are suitable for those areas, and also doing the contracting of the airplane, and finally to execution of the project. I will only rush through by saying that this is the activity that used a lot of geospatial technique, including the use of sentinel image for purpose of delineating the patches that were really degraded. Otherwise, there were some patches that were quite okay. They had some good biomass study. they had to be eliminated so that we don't waste those kind of parties. And once we were now clear about the area to do the reseeding, then that area, which was 3,500 hectares, it was subdivided using GIS technique into manageable blocks of 100 hectares. This is what I'm talking about. The area in, is it orange? Yes, orange is the color. Yeah, that was the area that we did IO seeding. But the area up, that is in the north, they were equally degraded, but they were reserved for the normal restoration techniques, that is the planting of seedlings. Then there was sensitization of the community. Remember, these are the community that had been moved out of the same forest, so they had to be appeased, kind of. And we held 2 meetings. Determination of 3 seeds for IO seeding. Initially, 35 seedings by vegetation of the ground and observing the remaining stock. But based on the available seeds in the Kenya Forestry Seed Center, we ended up now narrowing down to only 15 seedlings to be used for IO seeding. Now, determination of the seeding rate. We had now to balance based on the available seeds versus the area that had to be seeded. And we eventually agreed that 7,500 seeds per hectare would be okay. The airplane was procured, but from this company, Farmland Aviation Limited, kind of they are the only company that has got IO seeding service in the country. And the exercise was eventually launched on 1st November 2019, and in just 3 days we were able to receive 3,600 hectares, and a total of 3,580 kilograms of seed were dropped. This is the exercise of mixing the seed, the launching of the exercise, and a photo also showing the aircraft airborne now dropping the seeds. After those 3 days, and based on the tracking by the airplane, the area that was seeded is that which is shown in green, with the red being the routes by which the aircraft was circling and getting back on track. We did an in situ assessment to get to understand how good the seeds were being dropped by delineating some assessment plots, basically 2 meters by 2 meters, and having some people on the ground to literally count the seeds. And we did a good observation of 13,000 seeds per hectare, based on the extrapolation from those few plots that we were able to lay. What we learned is that it is much more cheaper to use aircraft to do reseeding for the areas that are degraded in the country, given that the cost of reseeding is just 0.5, 30 US dollars. That is 3,000 Kenya shillings per hectare, as compared to 8,800 US dollars if you are to raise the seedlings and plant them in just 1 hectare. Meaning that if we are to apply IO seeding in the restoration of the 5.1 million hectare, we would save the country a lot of money, but also fast track from 1,000 perhaps in just a matter of 10 years to do a total restoration of 5.1 million hectares. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for, of course, observing time. Our next presenter will be from Esri, please. Then next in line, Professor, you prepare. Yes. Good morning. My name is Godfrey Ludiema. I'm from S3. So I'll be presenting to you an intelligent system that can help you manage the water resources, entirely the water utilities. So as A3, we have an GIS platform that enables all the solutions for water intelligence in terms of, sorry, my screen is, I think it's off. It was showing. I think my screen disconnected, sorry for that. Is it? So, something happened here. I don't know what could be happening. Anatumia cast. So you use the cable. Use the connector as well with the cable. That kidogo nioneka itakuwa. Sorry for that, just a minute. Yes. The cable can't work with this. What is it? Something just happened here, I don't know. I can't use this one because it's not that standard with this my laptop. It's not standardized. That's why I want to choose that.
We can use a different machine.
There's a system I need to showcase here. Maybe you can just try to switch off that one then. Put it off.
You want to use off?
Huh? I have my own Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Just put it off.
Yes.
Then don't get to connect.
So you have to scan it. We have to scan it from
Yes.
here to.
Put it on.
Okay.
Sorry about it.
Mbona mulibeba nyinyi hii kitu? Sasa tunakata connect.
Present them as we solve the issue, then because of interest of time.
So cause of time, let the next presenter do that.
Good morning. I think it's afternoon, isn't it? Sorry, you know some machines, when you go to the market to buy a machine, make sure you buy a machine that you can use in Kenya. Mine is also frozen. Okay, you want to try?
No, it was just displaying.
I need to put it in the bar when you want. It's not coming. There you go. Sorry about this technology.
It is a blackboard, whiteboard. Disconnected.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I wish I had 2 hours. I can talk to you for 2 hours. But I guess I have about 20, 30 minutes. No problem. So this particular presentation, you can see Honorable Kipto is there. Chris Kipto. This is actually one of our lodges in Lake Baringo, called Soy Lodge. And you can see where the water is when you are talking about the flooding. And the impact of that flooding, we are used to this small flash of Yeah, we are used to the small kind of flash floods that you see, but you see for the water to reach there, it has risen almost 4 meters, something like that. If you can see where the water is, it's an enormous kind of thing that has happened. And so what's happening? One of my favorite persons from the US is actually Ali Gore, and I wish he was the president, because at one time he talked of climate change, and he said something about what will happen to the earth because of climate change. Ali Gore was the vice president, he was supposed to be the president, but somebody called Bush Akaiba. So he never became the president. But his rallying call was on climate change, and there are things he said about climate change. And there are things we need to know now that if we don't do something about our earth, it may not be there for our children to use. So you look at the earth as an object. And why is that so? Why that is so is for you to just understand that everything we have, or everything we have, we get it from the planet Earth. So literally hata hii nguo yako madam natoka tu hapa tu kwa Earth. So you just need to realize that. And then the other thing you need to realize is that everything we do it where? Here. Hakuna mahali ingine utaenda. So it means that what we do may influence how the earth is going to behave, and to maintain it blue, we want the earth to be blue, not brown or black or whatever. We want it to be blue, and therefore to benefit from what we call the blue economy. For those of you who understand the blue economy, then we need to understand that all these elements of the ecosystem are connected. So what you do in one of them affects the other. So we just need to understand that in context. And you also need to understand that the connections are actually very complex. They are not simple. They are very complex connections. When you put on the engine of the car, something happens, something is burning, and it releases exhaust. That exhaust immediately contains certain gaseous elements, and those gaseous elements add on to what is going to be the atmosphere, and eventually it's going to interact with the water in the atmosphere, that is a vapor, and eventually it's going to come down as acid rain again, and it will affect what? Your biosphere. So, but the connections are very complex, and I'm speaking this because of the students who are here, so that you really understand that our life depends on the planet entirely. What we know, and what God desires us to have, is a natural world that is self-regulating, self-sustaining, and with all the interconnected systems functional. But that's not what we have now. What we have now is what we call the constructed world. Beautiful houses like what you can see here. And the problem is, the constructed world is getting the earth more degraded. Just like it was mentioned by some of the colleagues here, the land degradation and so on. And in other words, the systems that I showed you in the previous diagram are becoming increasingly in conflict. They are not able to do what they are supposed to do. They are not able to be supplied with clean air or clean water and so on, because the system is not able to regulate it. And that is affecting our life on Earth. So if you look at those two planets, what is the problem? The problem is that, and this is an old diagram by the way, that you need to understand that we live on Earth as social beings influenced by these variables: ecology, traditions, religion, governance, livelihood systems, and we basically want our needs to be satisfied. Like you know this gentleman, because they wanted to show us the t-shirt, we didn't put it on the sweater, and he's suffering. So the thing is, how do you satisfy
satisfy his needs. We need to satisfy his needs. We need to make this room warmer. But if we did that, something else happens. Shall we get to the point, young man? If we make the room warmer, what will happen? It means that we are generating energy and then releasing more waste. The system is really interconnected. So, as social beings, how do we make our environment bearable to us? And how do we make it serve us in an equitable way? Equity. That is the context you need to think about. Equity will come about by being able to draw resources and use them for economic development, which is we are doing that one very clearly, by the way. And because of that, there is no equity in our systems. But equity can never happen, or economic development can never happen without the environment, the ecological part of the earth. So those are the things that are connected, and they are the things that create what? Sustainability. So this is called the sustainability model. Now, to make our life simple, Hospital Hill is here, and my state house guys are here. To make our life very simple, there is a question you need to ask yourself every day. Where you are, what is there? Everywhere you go, you just say, where I am here, what is there? Or what is not there? You know, you were just in a place you realize, here, there is a lot of nice grass, there is a lot of whatever. Here, it's just tarmac. So, you do what you call an observation, you observe, and tell us what you observe, or imagine what you observe. If you don't like it, there is a problem. If you like it, there could also be a problem, or you could be satisfied. But this is the model now, the GIS model we have been talking about. Where are you, and what do you see there? And then what you see, you interpret it as meaning to you, or to the people who live there. You interpret it as meaning. What does it mean here? If it is a bad thing, what would you like to see happen? And that is the only way you can apply your knowledge, your skills to solve the problem. And once you solve the problem, then you are changing your life. But it requires spatial thinking. It requires you to think what I'm doing in my house, throwing water to the road so that it goes to the nearest mutaro. What am I doing? What does it mean? And what effect will it have? And it is because of this, and the Kiama, I'm glad Kiama is here, and is trying to return back the vegetation without involving the community. I don't know whether they will survive. So, because of what we are doing on the earth, it then takes us to what we are seeing in the lakes. And I've left Lake Turkana. I'm now moving down to the 4 major lakes you know of. Lake Baringo. This is Lake Baringo. The only problem with this Lake Baringo, you go, there is some images you take, or you look at the Google Earth image. This place here, where the red dot is there, that there. When you zoom in an older image of 201, this is how the land was in 201, and this is the hotel called Baringo Lodge, here. But the water came, and Lake Baringo Lodge is somewhere here. The water came, filled up that part, and Lake Baringo Lodge is, you see this forest here? It's the same forest as that one. This one here, it's the same forest as that one. So, when you go there, the hotel is somewhere here. This actually a chimney somewhere there. And that's not so like I showed you, that's Lake Baringo Lodge. Well, it's not an ordinary flood. It's something beyond.
This is what we saw when we went there in 2013. The water had already filled the hotel up to the doors top. The hotel had closed a long time ago, I think in 2012. But when we went there last year, this is what we saw of the same hotel. Only the chimney. So I asked myself, how much water has gone into that lake? How much water has gone into that lake? From the lake to right is level, from the ground level to that level of the chimney. Jim, are you connecting? Is it worrying you?
Very much. Very much.
Your vegetation ilikufa kitambo. So there is no more vegetation there. You can see all this, you can see all that, and so on. And interestingly, this is Coco Island Dispensary. This is when we went there in 2013. But when we went there last year, we could not even see anything. There was nothing. Because the water had risen another 2 meters. So nothing was there in Coco Island Dispensary. But if you know about the Coco Island community, then you can imagine the type of stress that is there. And the people had already moved up the hill, and they were settled around upper part of the hill. And basically you can see this person does not have land to use anyway. He's just putting up his house on the slope somewhere, but where else can he put it anyway? Because the rest of the land that is left is a hill. There's nowhere where that person can put the land. And for the students, these are your colleagues. This is Baringo Secondary School. Of course, we are enjoying our life in Nairobi here, but you can imagine what these people are going through in terms of learning facilities. And of course, many other things. This is one of the hotels. For some reason now the crocodiles are, these are crocodile resting up here on top of the house there. And that's Kasarani village there. It is just mind-boggling. Does anybody have a question about Lake Baringo? Because I'm moving to the other lake.
Yes.
Yes, you have a question about Lake Baringo.
What is the origin of that water? How can you?
The water can either come from up here or from there. I mean, there are two sources of water. It is coming from the ground or it's coming from up.
For this one.
So for this one, in my own observation and from the Met statistics, there's a Met person here. There's a Met person here, where is he? Metrology. He is even from Met. Even today, if you look at our land today, just now, this month, you will see that our land is more green than it has been in the previous years. Why? Because there's actually more moisture on our land than we have ever had in the last while. So there's a lot of moisture or rainfall, I can call it, but in our system of measurements, we have not managed to really track and say that this water of amount of rain is contributing this discharge into the rivers, and this is contributing to this. However, were our catchment well conserved, then we will not have this very serious problem. So there is more rain than usual because of climate change, but the water is not able to remain where it is supposed to remain. It just runs into the lakes and fills them, and because you are filling a basket or a bucket every day or for a longer period, obviously the water will just fill up. So, yes, my friend.
Are you in position to link that with this hypothesis called Gaia hypothesis?
Come again?
There's a hypothesis named Gaia hypothesis which tries to explain how Mother Nature is reacting to some of our reactions here. So does it try to answer that Gaia hypothesis?
In one way, yes, but in another way, then you need to ask yourself, must it be this bad? Okay, like now we know that there is a 50-year rainfall cycle. In 50 years, you can receive an exceptional rainfall, and that can create a problem. Our country has not faced this flooding for the first time now. It was like so in 1963.
And it was like so in 1902 from the records we read. So this is not the first time we are experiencing the problem. So the cycles are there. But this particular cycle has stayed longer and is more intense. This particular cycle. And the only thing this cycle has done, it has defined the boundary of the lakes. Now, if there is any rainfall in future of this nature, it will come up to here. What do we do next? We decide on how to develop in that area once the water goes back. Thank you for that question, but it is a debate we can then go into depth. Then the other lake is a very famous lake to you, Lake Bogoria, which again, I picked this portion up here, where the red dot is. Where the red dot is this is the same red dot here, and this is the same red dot there. And you can see for practical purposes that the lake water, even the airstrip that was here, is long underwater, and even the park entrance, which is just at the red dot, is actually underwater. You can't enter the park. And anything else beyond the park entrance is underwater. So everything is underwater. You can see the road here. You can't see that road here. So instead they created another one. You see, because of the problem of this road, which is this road here, they created another one to enter the park. And obviously here it filled the water with water again, and I think they have created another diversion. So man is developing without planning and without seeing what will happen tomorrow. It's called waste of resources. It's called waste of resources, you know. You don't agree? Yeah. So, with all this dilemma, there are a number of issues that have arisen of socioeconomic nature. The size of the population affected is much larger, probably much larger than this, but these are just households. Households means every homestead, which normally has about 5 to 10 people. You can multiply the population there. 24 learning institutions are no longer functional in that particular place. The roads are destroyed and so on. Electric lines are no longer functional. They are underwater. And of course, health facilities, about 12 of them in 12 villages are submerged, and at least 7. And in fact, you can see this is the road. I mean, this is the road here, and this is the same road here. So it's underwater, and you can see the water has crossed the park, and it's entering the village there on the other side of Mwiki area in Nakuru. And you can see from the Baboon Cliff up here, you can see that the water is actually crossing over into the villages here on the lake, when the lake is normally around here. So there's also again enormous flooding affecting vegetation. Obviously, you can see it has been progressively doing so. This vegetation died much earlier, and the new vegetation is dying here. And therefore, it's an ecological, what we call an ecological disaster in terms of what is happening. And it is a very bad situation here, considering that this is the park gate to Nakuru. That's a park gate to Nakuru. So, again, one will ask, where is all this water coming from? What is going on around? And you just go to your house and sleep, So, some things we just can't interpret them. And again, Lake Nakuru has lost a lot of land in terms of acreage and so on. There are a lot of, the park has shrunk, the animals, of course, have reduced, the grazing areas reduced. In fact, some fragmentation is there, like where the lake is fragmenting. And the last, Lake Naivasha, a very familiar lake to us, perhaps too familiar to an extent that you don't even go there to enjoy this scenery. But Lake Naivasha, it has a very famous island called Crescent Island, which is this one here. So you pick this red dot, you
can see the red dot here, and you can see that Crescent Island is normally normal land with a very nice circuit road here, and a very nice golf course road here, and so on and so on. And you can see even these structures here, all of them are underwater. You see this is the road here, and you can see these structures here, all of them are underwater, and you can see what is happening in some of the big hotels in that particular environment or ecosystem. And again, the situation is such that even the waters came all the way to Kyoto village. And these people, of course, if you can't move away, you just stay in the same house with the water. But then, of course, you know, there's a health problem associated with that, and it's not a good thing for that community. And of course, the socioeconomic findings in this area is such that there's an estimated about 500 households in that area. 6 people had already died by the time we were in the field and so on. 20 kilometers of road was submerged, and of course, beach resorts and other places were also destroyed. Just wanted to give you a picture to understand that when we're talking about water and water resource management, it can be a very different story when the earth wants to talk. It can be a very different story. What can you manage here? The only thing now you need to think, and even if you want to say catchment management, it cannot be an overnight thing to do. It's a long-term strategy. And that long-term strategy must have certain aims you want to achieve and certain end results that you want to see. I think I can give the Upper Hill one question to ask and the State House girls one question to ask, and then I sit down. That's not Upper Hill. You're Upper Hill. Then you put your hand down. I will ask you last. Upper Hill one question. Okay, State House girls, one question. Sasa, how can student not ask a question? Ask a question, any question. Don't feel shy. Yes, young man.
From the way you have explained, does it mean that maybe some years to come, maybe the entire earth itakuwa maji, the entire earth?
Okay. The way I've explained, you can sit down. The way I've explained, the earth can face the stress from water in the near future, maybe very near future. Why? Although it is cold today, it is very cold today, the earth is warmer than usual. And because it is warmer than usual, it is melting the ice in the poles. And it has already melted the ice in our mountains. Mount Kenya has very little ice. Mount Elgon used to have ice. Mount Kilimanjaro used to have a lot of ice. Those ice are no longer there because they have melted, and the water, when it melts, it just flows to the lowest areas. When the water in the poles melt, the water simply fills the sea, and the sea rises slowly, and any land that is flat along the sea area, the coastal areas, in Mombasa, Malindi, and so on, they'll just get water, and they'll just push people away, and the water will enter even inside and enter aquifers which they used to drink. Man will suffer tomorrow. All because of global warming. State House girls, yes. You say your name so that we know. And the young man, what was your name? Eh? Morris. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon to you.
I'm Otino Vena from State House Girls. So my question is about the rising water levels in Lake Naivasha, Nakuru, and Baringo. So are there signs that the lakes are about to rise so that the people, the household around the lakes are cautious or are alerted by the rising water levels, or it just comes abruptly and everyone is disorganized? So are there signs that the water levels are about to rise and cause flooding around the areas?
Thank you for that. For these particular lakes, I'm sorry to take you back to the maps. For this particular, okay, I can just go to the Naivasha one. Maybe the most clear one is the one of Baringo. Yeah, the one of Baringo which affected the hotels. Sorry. For this one, for the water to leave here and start moving, it did not happen in one day. It just happens slowly. The water just comes, fills, and stays somewhere, comes, fills, and stays somewhere, comes, fills, and stays somewhere. And the only thing you can do is to just, unasonga tu nyuma kidogo. Okay? So when we went to this place, there are people who have moved how many times? 5 times. Nasongeza nyumba yako, unajenga. After about 2 months, the water is here. Unasonga tena. Until they did not have where to go except to their relatives who are living somewhere else. So this particular water is not something that came overnight. That's been coming since 2010. In particular since 2010 September. And sometimes it stops, sometimes you see as it is going down, and then it starts again. For those of us who have been monitoring, anytime it is raining, we hear that NET tells us that we are going to receive more rainfall in Western Kenya and so on and so on. The only thing we need to ask, you call a friend, how is the lake behaving? Oh, we have started seeing the water coming again. Then you know it is the rain that was announced by KMD. That's how we have been monitoring, by the way. That's why I know that it is rain from the sky, not rain from the ground. Okay? So the water wants. By the time it reached the hotel doorstep, somewhere here, the hotel simply moved, they started moving their things to a house that was a little bit upper. Before they knew, they didn't even have time to move the goods. In fact, the Soy Lodge, they did a very interesting thing. They spent 20 million to do a wall. The water came and they passed over the wall. You are aware? They used 20 million to do a wall to prevent the water from coming in. The water came over because the water is 15 meters. The lake is 15 meters deep. Yeah, have I answered your question? Now, your question, then I will see. Now let us leave that girl another question. Young girl.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon to you.
My name is Joy Irene from Status Girls. Just as you have said, that the water rises gradually, right? So my question is, for instance, Lake Baringo, it is a freshwater lake and it has got outlets. So why can't the outlets drain the water as soon as it enters the lake? Thank you.
Very interesting. Very interesting, by the way. Lake Baringo is a freshwater lake. Geography tells us that a freshwater lake drains water, receives and takes out. That's why it remains fresh. Lake Baringo receives water, I don't have the map of the rivers here, but it receives water from a river called Arabelle that runs, I think, like that, and then that's the lake where now. Arabelle. There's a river called Arabelle, and then there's another river called Molo here, and then there's another river called Berkera here, and then there's another river called, I forget the name, somewhere here. Endau here. So, and you know it's Molo, it is Arabelle, Molo, Berkera, and Endau River. They feed it. All these rivers come from Mau and the Tugen Hills. Although much of the water in Tugen Hills goes to Kerio Valley direct. And then the water now stays here and drains away from this end into Suguta Valley, underground. And the area here is higher, much higher than the area here. So the area here is like there is a wall, and in that wall there are fissures, cracks, and through those cracks the water goes out. How big are the cracks? Can the water really run out fast enough? No. If the water is not able to run out fast enough, it just fills the basin. The only fear we have right now, my girl, is that if this lake ever drains out, if it ever finds an overflow area to overflow like this, the first thing it will do is to dig a channel called erosion channel. And the next thing it will do, it will widen the channel because there's a lot of water running out. The next thing it will do, if woe unto you, we are living downstream, what will happen? What will happen? It will flood and sweep you away. That's our fear. Last question.
Hi, my name is Dolphin from Dalberg Research. So my question to you would be, in your opinion, what would it take to build a GIS model comprehensive enough to actually attribute the rise in water level to various scenarios that we can think of? Because I'm thinking with this model in mind, we're able to tweak various variables, model scenarios, simulate different causes, and see the effects these have on the water level. So what would it take to achieve this?
I was hoping you were going to ask me what the models have been done. The models have been done. You can even do the model to fill the basin. You know, you have the contoured map and so on. You have the 3D model. And the only thing you do is to do what we call a runoff model, a runoff model, and simulate a context of so much water raining. And the model itself will drain it to the lowest point, and then it will drain and fill it up, and you can see how it is filling up. We have done all those things before. So what does it take you to do the model? Yeah. Very simple. If you get DTM, digital terrain model data, which is actually available, again, at various resolutions, I wish you could get the most accurate resolutions, then you can just use that data to do your modeling. And that data alone and the scenarios you can build, you can just do an hydrological model. In the absence of the DEM data that is lately available from USGS, and by the way, for your information, the creator of that data was in KU, and they trained us for 3 days, courtesy of RCMRD. Where is RCMRD? Is RCMRD here today? They brought Paul to KU, and the creator of the data, the SRTM data, came here and was telling us the value of that data in terms of accurate measurements, what Nani was trying to tell you. Spatiality, Willie Simons. What Willie Simons was trying to capture to us is the accuracy of mapping. But Washington Ocheng was also here in KU, and Washington Ocheng in the University College London. They measure accuracy to the nanometer range of measurements using satellite, which is now guides the planes to land. If we had that data available, we'll just see on an hourly basis how the water is behaving. That's not a problem. The problem is your government is not willing to invest even 1 shilling on even the lowest level of resolution of data. And that's extremely worrying. Okay, our government, because I'm part of that scenario. Thank you very much, people, and thank you for giving me your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Prof, for the good presentation. Esri, are you ready? So please try to now minimize Prof as even onto your time. Sorry for that. So maybe the next presentations, you people get ready. Upande, you get ready. Miriam from Kimathi, Duncan from Kimathi. So in that order, please. And we'll strictly adhere to the 5 minutes presentation so that we can have as many as possible people present. Those who may have not submitted their presentations, you can submit them to the desk. We have our desk there. It's called Felix. Those who do not have the laptops, please proceed. Yes. Good afternoon. So I had already started presenting, but something just happened, but I'll just go through it very fast. So I'm from S3 Eastern Africa. We are the only advanced mapping solutions in the world. We provide solutions for the ArcGIS system. So I'll be presenting to you a solution that can enable all the water utilities in the world just to leverage on an ArcGIS system as a system of systems. So within this system of systems, we have a system of record that forms a foundation for maybe just having just database of all the customers. And from this database, this is where you can do a model that you're able to see where these networks are and the way they're operating in terms of maybe you need to modernize the entire network and even doing the engineering designs. Then the other system that I really want to look at is the system of engagement. System of engagement, this is where you have the mobile application apps. That's where you have the smartphones. You can just install applications on your mobile phone so that you are able to access all the entire network of your pipelines, the meters, where they are. Maybe you need to collect meter readings through the mobile devices. So we have a solution for that called ArcGIS Field Maps. And maybe doing the workforce management through the ArcGIS workforce management. Then on the system of engagement, this is where we can integrate with other systems like the CRMs, the billing systems. Then we can also have a real-time monitoring system. Maybe we are having leakages on the pipes. We can integrate it with the sensors that are able to sense on the pipeline. Maybe if there are leakages on the pipe, they're able to report on a real-time basis. So this can be done from the field, the people in the field or the sensors in the field, which report to the office. And again, from the office, we have applications that will be able to report to the public that maybe there's an outage somewhere. For the water, providing all the apps. So, and again, the other last thing that are of interest with the ArcGIS system, this is where I have a system of insights. As a system of insights, this is where you can do a lot of analytics in terms of maybe you need to do business intelligence. You're able to have a system of insight whereby we have an operation dashboards that are able to report just a summary operational view of the entire network that is operating. Maybe there are leakages which are happening in the field, and the sensors which are integrated in that dashboard, they're able to report that there's a leakage at a particular place. Then you're able to see it on a dashboard somewhere. So the other thing is that we as S3 have just customized a solution just to manage all the water utilities, just an extension, just to entirely manage the system of records, just basically the network of the water pipes, the meters, where these customers are, using an ArcGIS utility network. It's simply just a network that captures all these workflows. And again, the benefit that you get out of this extension that you are able to do your mapping of all the pipelines, then do the engineering designs through the schematic diagrams. Then also have advanced analytics. Maybe you need to do a network trace. You need to trace how many customers are on this particular pipeline using this extension in the ArcGIS platform. Then we can also have an historical view and even do the planning of the entire network. What I mean by this is that from the system of records, you are able to have all the information of all the customers, or where these assets are and when they were installed, and the expected life cycle of the entire pipeline network for the water utilities. Then and again, you can have a 3D view. You can have a 3D view of your entire network. Then the other thing that will benefit you get out of this, I already talked about advanced modeling. Then you can also have that pervasive access. What I mean by this is that you can access this entire network of your pipeline through the mobile devices, through the computer, through just basically anywhere. That is a replica of that. You can access it through your desktop, your web devices, and even your mobile phones. So we as S3, we simply provide a complete solution that integrates all the system of records, that is the assets, where they are, then the system of insights, then the system of engagement. So by you having all this way we have the field operations. You're able to do the field operations like inspection of the pipelines. Maybe there could be leakages, maybe they could be aging. So you are able to inspect this pipeline using the ArcGIS solution that we have. Then you are able to respond to emergencies, maybe an outage somewhere, you need to respond to it using this system. So there are those initiatives that you might want to take. Maybe you need to do some innovations on the entire network. Maybe you need to upgrade it. This system is able to provide the solutions for you. Then one most very important thing with asset management, you are able to manage where these assets are, and just having a centralized database somewhere that you are able to know the number of assets that you have and the way they are operating in terms of age, in terms of the life cycle. You are able to have all this. Then you are able to do a network modernization of the entire pipeline system. So that is that. Maybe I can just show you some screenshots of. So this is a system of records of all the water pipelines. This is just a prototype for Rural Water. Rural Water has come up with a very robust system for managing where all the assets are. It's just a record of their system. Then I can provide for you the system of, so this system of records, you are able to have it on the web. This is a system that is running on ArcGIS platform, so that you can be able to access this maybe on your mobile phone. Then there's a case scenario for our customer, one of our clients that we are really supporting in terms of the GIS solutions. That is Arusha Water. Arusha Water is able to have a dashboard that's able to monitor the number of connections of customers leveraging on this. This is what I call an operational dashboard. So the manager in the office is able to just understand, today there are this number of customers who are connected to this line, or these are the number of customers who are expected to be connected on the grid, on that entire water network. And maybe those customers maybe are waiting payments. So I'm just finishing. So I already shown you the system of engagement. Then you're able to have an asset management dashboard. That's basically just to manage the dashboard, to just have an operational view of the entire network. So you're just going to have a system of insights. So it's just giving you insights of the data set of the system of record that you have. So one of the most dangerous animals in the water industry is the non-living water losses. So we as SRE, we have solutions for managing the water leakages. Just having it, maybe can be used to report the water leakages. Then there's an operational dashboard that's able just to show you in the office. So the manager is able to respond to the leakages very fast. Other than the field people reporting the leakages, we can integrate the sensors using the Internet of Things just to report on the leakages that are happening maybe on the pipeline. So that is how we enable an intelligent system that just can respond to maybe just leakages in real time. And maybe we can also, not maybe, that's what we do. We can also integrate, you can also integrate smart meter readings. There are those meters which have sensors that you can just integrate with the ArcGIS system, then have on the dashboard somewhere, they're able to report on the meter readings, other than having the people going to the field go read the meter readings, then they're able to respond to the payments. So that is what I had for you guys. So thank you so much. Maybe any question from you?
Yes. Hi again. So my question to you would be, while I am aware that ArcGIS tries so hard to integrate APIs, I was just wondering if there's a provision to integrate the World Pop API, because it's actually a large GIS data repository for populations, and we work with that a lot, but we do not have that provision yet. So is it something that you guys are working on?
Yes, actually, I just talked about briefly, an GIS is a system of systems. So it can be integrated with any kind of systems in the world. That is integratable. Using the APIs, just through the database system, we can be able to look at that. So maybe we can have a session and discuss this further. Great. Any other question?
Yeah, thank you, Esri. Next, to Pande.
Then Kimathi, you get 5 minutes. Danka, 5 minutes. Ann, 5 minutes. Then short, technical, 5 minutes. So prepare in that order. The IT.
Okay, good afternoon. So my name is Kipngetich Ngeno, and I'm here with my colleague, Margaret Chepkirui, and we're presenting on Smart Asset Management in a Click from Upande Limited. So I'll start off with the problem statement. So a lot of companies and water utilities in Africa have issues with keeping of their records when it comes to customer records, bills, all of that, because a lot of them still use traditional methods, that is files, and I think people will be surprised in this digital age we're still using files, but it actually happens, especially for small utilities. So the problem with this is, for example, you go to a customer calls in, they want to know what is the account balance, and the people at the office have to go through like 3 or 4 files just to find a clear record of the customer statement and give them feedback. That means that you have to hire more people, and that takes up the operational cost for the utility, especially the small utilities which are already struggling with finances a lot of the times and maybe asking for funding from government and all that. So you would think there should be solutions for this. Yes, there are solutions already in the market for this, but a lot of them are Western solutions which tend to be a bit pricey, and as you all know, because of power purchase parity between Africa and the West, something that would be like affordable in the West tends to be a bit steep for small utilities and SMEs here in Africa. So our value proposition. Our value proposition is to have simple, smart, yet affordable software that can be used by these small businesses and utilities. So we have a simple smartphone-based application that allows you to collect data in the field on assets. So when it comes to assets in this case, it's a variety of things. Assets come from customers. A customer is an asset for utility or a small business. Bulk meters, domestic meters, sensors, and all of that. All these are assets that are important to the company, and you need to manage them. You need to do maintenance. You don't want to get to a point where something breaks and you're not on top of things. It reduces the efficiency of the company. So we as Upande, we provide this platform, these tools that will help you manage these assets in a standardized way, because we've been doing this for a couple of years, which allows you now to do the things the right way so that you reduce on your losses, and on top of all these tools, we actually give you the training, the virtual assistance, and the support to ensure that you are actually using these tools to give you the best benefit. So we have three main building blocks. So we have data collection applications or bots. So apart from like native apps, we have also chatbots for WhatsApp and Telegram. If, for example, a lot of people may not have the actual native app for a phone, in this case, you can have a WhatsApp. You just text, it's more like Zulu from Safaricom, something like that. You just text, you say hi, they give you, you sort of have a more like human interaction with the system, and then you get to get maybe information about assets in the field. You can send data to the server through the bots. The second building block is we have spatial data infrastructure, e.g. Upande SDI, and we have also data management custom modules that allows water utilities and small businesses to manage things like CIS, this is Customer Identification Survey, and billing that is water bills, and non-revenue water, that is water losses, and as well as meter reading. So the first, I'll start with just data collection. So as I said, we have native apps that are used to collect data in the field. These apps can collect points, lines, polygons, and these are then post-processed with QGIS on SDI, that is Upande SDI. We also have the Upande sensors. In this case, they're used to monitor live asset data. These are like bulk meters that are placed strategically within the pipelines. We have pressure sensors, tank level sensors, and chlorine sensors as well. So once this data is submitted using this two main collection methods, that is the applications and the bots, and the sensors, you cannot be able to manage this data at the office, for example, and you can have dashboards and analysis of the data on different things. So as I was saying, we have CIS, non-revenue water, meter reading, billing, ERP. So when it comes to, for example, physical asset management, that's the one maybe I'll give an example. If you have an asset in the field that needs to be maintained every 2 years or replaced, the company needs to be on top of things when it comes to when to do this maintenance. So we have a system, so we have integrated this system with an ERP that allows you to create tasks for people who are going to the field. So when that time comes for maintenance, that is preventative maintenance of the assets, you get alerts, that is SMS, emails, that tells you now, you need to go to the field, you need to do asset maintenance so that you don't have maybe losses in terms of water. Okay. And we have also the spatial data infrastructure. So for this, I'll hand it over to Margaret to explain more.
So on the SDI instance, Upande offers like server-based platforms, for example, the GeoNodes, and just some, GeoNodes, and they're integrated to the ERPs and the personal softwares that we have. So the platforms allow, they're like smartphone, and they're server-based, and they allow you to collect data, manage the data, and it's linked through QGIS, and also offers the interoperability, the legal frameworks for data, the OGC standards, and they're also linked to the Upande software for asset performance tracking. So the SDIs are really important considering the large amount of data that we always collect from the field. Sometimes it's hard for you to store in your local computers, and also when you need like your customers to view on the website, we are able to integrate all that data and allow all your customers to view it from there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. So I'll just try to tell you the comparison of Upande and maybe other companies. So we have no hidden costs for new users. We have, as I said, we want to make it affordable for small businesses. So we have a starting price of up to $50 per month. That's around 5,000 Kenya shillings. We start with, you don't have to purchase, you can do subscription. That makes it easy for entry for small businesses that don't have a lot of capital. It's prepaid, so it has a flexible framework that can be easily customized and to fit your specific needs. And that can be done through, for example, service level agreements with the company. You can ask for specific customizations, and then we can be able to help you with that. And on top of all this, the data that comes from the sensors, for example, in the field, is live. So the data is submitted, you're able to see immediately, and as well as the alerts and the messages that you get. We've worked with both private utilities, public, small, as well as large utilities, both in Kenya and Mozambique. So some of our customers are Kuna Nagel, we have Kiwasco, that's Kisumu Water, Majimilele, WSTF, that is Water Trust Fund, Malindi Water, Nakuru Water, Naivasha Water. We have an ongoing project in Mozambique with Walifi, and we also have worked with Ruiru Water. So our call is we can partner, and since we'll benefit, we help you reduce the losses, and we get the profits. Yes, so this is our contacts. You can get our contact details. You can talk to us, get more information about the company and what we do. And we also have a booth right there, so just visit us and we'll give you more information on that. Thank you.
I'm going to be distributing these leaflets. They are the sample IoT sensors we have that we offer. Yeah,
thank you very much for that presentation from Pando. Duncan. Miriam. Miriam, so that will be Duncan from Kimathi.
Then
Anne, you're next. You're next. 5 minutes, strictly 5 minutes. Let's adhere to time so that we finish earlier. Today is Friday, please. Yes. The point of concern, when you are crossing, don't cross in front of the camera, please. So you cross behind the camera. Yes, I'm Duncan Kimotu from the University, and I'm presenting a research on applying GIS in modeling water balance dynamics using climatic, biophysical, and anthropogenic variables, and a case study of Upper Ewazabira River Basin. Now, when you hear of water balance dynamics, we are more referring to the process of disintegrating rainfall to various components such as surface runoff, infiltration, and evapotranspiration. In fact, that those components dictate or moderate the terrestrial ecosystem, and they have an impact to human and ecological health. On the problem statement, we find that the information about the water balance dynamic has been a major setback when it comes to process of formulating and implementing appropriate mitigation measures that are affecting human and ecological health, and therefore there is need to
identify these water balance dynamics or simulate them, because basing them on in situ data measurement cannot give a clear or show the clear spatial distribution of these components. I want to skip this. The significance of this study is that you find that if you can be able to simulate the water balance dynamics, there is high probability that you can be able to come up with a good agroecological zones that would assist in coming up with viable regions for agriculture, and these regions that are not viable for doing in agriculture activities. And this information is credible or is credible when it comes to assisting the stakeholder, like those dealing with water resource management and agronomists, and as well as it increases the resilience to climate-related risks. Now, this is the study area. This is my study. This is the Upper Ewazagiro River Basin, which lies in Meru, Laikipia, Meru, Isiolo, and Nyandarua County. This is the number model, which requires some data set from climatic data, that is rainfall, some anthropogenic data derived from remote sensing data, and in this case I derived land covers. I also use soil, which I derive the hydrological soil groups, which play a very vital role in developing the hydrological response units. I also used RASCA facilities to extract slope, which also affect the water balance dynamics, especially the surface runoff and evapotranspiration. These are the models, the equations that I used in ArcGIS, or I modeled using the ArcGIS software to come up with the simulated surface runoff potential, potential evapotranspiration, and potential infiltration. And on the results, I noted that the region registers a very low surface runoff. As you can see from the maps that are profiled there, it is only 2009 that registers some substantial amount of rainfall, especially towards Mount Kenya regions. On the issue of relationship between the surface runoff and rainfall, for example, in figure 5 that I have provided, you can see that it does not, the graph does not start from the origin. And this is due to the fact that there is, if you check on the x-axis, you find that the reason for that curve not passing through the origin is due to the fact that once it starts raining, there is some substantial amount of rainfall that is not converted to surface runoff, and that is called initial abstraction. And from my assessment, I noted that it was about 9.92 millimeters. And from this graph, I was able to come up with the runoff coefficient, which is dictated by the gradient. And in this case, it is 0.0987, which now I use now to simulate the surface runoff for the whole basin. And from here, I was also, if you can check on these equations, I was also able to extract the evapotranspiration coefficient. And from my assessment, the evapotranspiration coefficient is provided by subtracting the gradient of surface runoff from the identity rainfall, or gradient, which is 1. Using now the evapotranspiration coefficient index, I was able to simulate the evapotranspiration within the basin from 1986 to 2018. And those are the statistics that I provided. And I noted that much of the rainfall within the basin was lost through evapotranspiration as compared to surface runoff and infiltration. I also simulated the infiltration, and I noted that the amount was very low. And to my conclusion, if you look at that graph, it is showing the relationship between rainfall, the evapotranspiration, the infiltration and surface runoff. And from there, it is very clear that the evapotranspiration contributed the highest percentage of water loss, followed by infiltration, and surface runoff was very small as per the analysis that we carried out. And we noted that 90% of water loss within the basin was through evapotranspiration. And that's how we were able to come up with to disintegrate the water balance dynamics from main four. That is the surface runoff, the infiltration, and evapotranspiration. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. Next.
Okay, this is Dr. Mtumabi, University of Technology. As we wait for the projection, I am Charlatan, and in our project we worked with some group members. We have Miriam. Maybe you can stand. Okay, we have Nancy. And, Nancy, okay. Then we are from the Civil Engineering Department, meaning we are more interested with applied GIS, not only mapping, but how we can use that data to reduce the losses that are related to civil engineering. Okay, we want to reduce the non-revenue water. That go to the next slide. That we usually experience. Next slide. And let me say that most of the non-revenue water from the civil engineering point of view is attributed to pipe damages by developers. And next slide. And by developers in the development of infrastructure. That is one of the machines that usually destroy pipes. And as contractors, we don't destroy the pipes intentionally. It is because you don't know the exact location of those pipes. And when you tell me that there is a pipe in the area that I'm constructing, if you don't give me the exact point, I think the cost of trying to establish where the point is more than breaking the pipes. So it is easier to give me the exact location of those pipes so that I can reduce those losses. Then, as a contractor, if I damage a pipe, the first action which I can take is to turn off the water so that I can reduce the losses. But if I don't know where the control valve is, I think then the cost of searching for the control valve is more than letting the water leak. So you have to tell me where exactly is that control valve. So in our solution, we want to map those control valves, meaning that I'd come up with an app which can tell me that from where you are standing, the control valve is, let's say, 1 kilometer, and then it can guide me. It can guide me to that control valve. Again, now assuming now that I'm not a contractor, let's say I'm a retired contractor, if I spot a leakage along the way, what I can do as a good person, I will inform my water supplier that there is a leakage. But then the supplier will take some time to respond to this. So as a good person, again, I can ask him, where is the control valve which I can use to turn off the water so that you can reduce the losses. Then if you don't have the points, then I think I will allow the water to continue leaking. Then if you have the coordinates, if I'm starting here, I know I have a control valve in the downstream and one in the upstream. If you give me the control valve in the downstream, then it will not help. So you have to give me that control valve which is in the upstream so that I can turn off the water. This means that you have to know the direction of water in various pipes. So we want to modify our app so that it will be capturing the direction of water in those pipes, and then it will be capturing the location of the water, of the valves, the control valves. Meaning if you contact me, I will tell you, go to a certain point, there is a control valve. Meaning I am not confusing directions. Then in the transaction management criteria, we are going to be mapping the demand. Go to the next slide, please. Next slide. I have discussed this. These objectives is what we are trying to come up with. Next slide. This is trying to show the different types of pipes which we need to map. The blue one is the pipes which are carrying water throughout the time. Let's say we can say that this is supplying, say, a hospital. Then the others are supplied with water at various days, different days, or at different times. So you have to understand which pipe serves throughout, so that I cannot turn this valve off and it is supplying a hospital. I have to know which valve I should tamper with at any given time. Next slide. Then transaction management, we have to understand the demands at various areas. We can say that this is, let's say this is Kerry, this is another point, this is the water source. I have to understand, according to my water source, I have 1,000 cubic meters, which I can produce per day. The demand for Kerry is, let's say, 800 cubic meters. The demand of, let's say this is another organization, is 200 cubic meters. So if I serve this and this, I have finished my production. Then if I serve this and let's say demand one is, let's say 200, 800, I'm producing 1,000, 800, 1,600, so I cannot serve these 2 points at the same time because I cannot meet their demand. And next slide. This is now the progress. We have come up with an app for Objective 1, that is an app which can tell you that where the exact location of a pipe is. This is in Dedan Kimathi University of Technology. This is a line of pipe. If I stand, let's say here, then the pipe can tell me, the app can tell me that this pipe is, let's say, 100 kilometers from where you are. And then now we want to modify the app so that it will incorporate the water direction and incorporate the valves and the different types of pipes, which is supplying water full time and which is supplying water at different times of a day or at different days of a week. And I think that is all. I can conclude by saying that if the app is adopted, it can reduce the non-revenue water, and also it can improve the consumer satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter. Yeah, let's take as much as little time the way the last presenter has done. All protocols observed. I am Nick, teaching line from South Technical Training Institute. On behalf of my fellow trainers from South Technical and the students, I would like to present our work on application of GIS in management of non-revenue water. Yeah, it's a case study of Mohammed Water Distribution Company. As you all know that the greatest problem that is facing most water service providers currently is the non-revenue water. We all know that non-revenue water is contributed by the leaking main pipes, the faulty meters, and even the illegal connections. So there is is a need by the water service providers to adopt sustainable development policies to avoid the wastage of water. So we saw a need that there should be a solution, or rather solution should be sought to accurately record the water consumption and identify abnormalities in water distribution network. So attempts have been made by quite a number of water companies to employ some of the techniques of leak detections, like the direct observation and the rest. However, these methods that have already been applied have their own associated challenges. Like, one, it does not keep the exact location of the leakage. Another one is that it requires a lot of inspection that may take a long time and even a lot of human capital and financial capital. So, we thought and we realized that GIS and Earth observation can be used to solve these problems in water distribution system. And we recognize the efforts of various researchers that have come up with the digital meters like Upande that we just saw in their last presentation. They have tried to come up with some of the smart sensors that are able to sense quite a number of water flow information. So, however, quite a number of these things, even though they are in existence, have not been employed by most of the water companies because of the fact that they require a lot of skills and on installation of the supporting softwares. So the existence of the GIS technologies and innovation of the digital smart meters prompted us to come up with a system that can quickly analyze the flow data and communicate on the nature of the defect and even the exact location in the distribution system where the defect occurs. So I will not go in detail to explain how the smart meter works, but actually the smart meters can record the water flow, like pressure, temperature, and even the flow rate, and remotely sense to the main distributions office for actions to be taken. So how the system works, the coordinates of each and every meter is recorded, or rather mapped. The flow data and the coordinates are simultaneously sent by the smart meters, and they are simultaneously received, and the system analyzes and keeps the defect information and the location of the defect. So this system works by combining the flow data from the various meters installed at various points in the distribution system. I will briefly give the steps for setting up and solving these abnormalities by using this method. So number one, you are supposed to use the GIS to set up a network to resemble the planned flow distribution pattern. And then you identify the spots, suitable spots to install those smart meters and locate them using the coordinates. So a smart meter, a smart inflow meter is normally installed to record the flow in main supply pipe. For the inflow meter, we are supposed to split the flow among the pipes which are leaving that particular meter, and as we all know that unless there is a leakage in the pipeline, there will be no additional outflow since the water that has not been used by the neighborhood yet. So for each and every inflow meter, we are supposed to split the flow among the pipes which are leaving that meter and put another meter for that pipe at the end of each and every pipe. So for the above meters and the next in the distribution system, subtract the summation of the recorded flow in the branch pipes from the recorded flow in the inflow meters. So that is actually done by using when you look at that diagram, this is just a schematic diagram of the water distribution system with the portion of the smart meters. Like for this case, the summation of the flow in recorded by meter A1, P1, and P2 should be equals to the meter reading or the flow that is recorded by meter A1. Even though the summation of B1, A2, and P2 are not the same, then it automatically tells us that there is a leakage here or there is some illegal correlations here. So there is now a software that is able to analyze these things and communicate them to the observer in the control room in an easily understood manner, giving the exact location of that fault and the nature of the defect for the action to be taken. Thank you very much. So, Technical Training Institute. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Anne Geshohe. I'm doing the unprecedented rise in water level in Kenyan lakes, like what Prof had presented to us. I'm doing this project under supervision by Dr. Kevin Acheng of DECUT. He's currently my lecturer. So to introduce us, the rise in the lakes is causing a lot of flooding. You've put an And as Prof has told us and has shown us, there has been loss of life and there has been loss of property due to the flooding. There has also been displacement of the communities and also wildlife. Some time back ago, we saw giraffes being transferred from the Lake Baringo Conservancy to a higher land. So these problems have brought the increased rates has been rated at 5% of the Kenyan GDP. So that is what flooding is costing the Kenyan community as we speak. So the increase in these rates can be attributed to different factors and different sources. One of these sources is the long rainy seasons, which are currently observing more than the normal average rainfall. So Kenya has two rainy seasons, the March to May and the October to December. So when these rainy seasons get more than the average rainfall, all this water is then drained into the lakes. But then when it gets to the lakes, the next problem it gets is the sedimentation. Sedimentation comes from the economic activities being practiced uplands. So sedimentation can be complicated because one, it increases the surface area of the lakes. So that means the sedimentation is pushing the water out towards the population. The other thing is, for example, for Lake Baringo, we know that it has only one known exit. So the sedimentation could be blocking the exit that we know from Lake Baringo. The other issue that can be attributed to the rising level is the tectonic plate movement. So most of the valley lakes are located between three tectonic plates. So we have the Somalia one to the left, we have the African or the Libyan plates to the right, and we have the Arabian plates to the north. All these plates are moving in different directions. These directions could be blocking the outlet, especially now for the Lake Baringo, and it could also be shifting the flow and the quantities of the rivers that are exiting these lakes. So in this case, we are going to focus in Lake Turkana, Baringo, and Victoria. The data that we are going to use is the bathymetry and the altimetry data. One, we are going to get it from the Tahiti database. This is a database for hydrological time series. So it calculates the time series and tells you on this year, this was the level of the lake, and as years goes by, it continues calculating as well as it gives a model that can tell you in the next 2 years we expect the water to rise or go down to whatever level. The other one is the USGS Explorer. So here we download the images from the engine and analyze them using QGIS, as well as the NASA observatory engine. So all these images are then analyzed through QGIS. So for example, for Lake Turkana, as it has been indicated from the website, you can see that Lake Turkana has had the highest level recorded before in 1998, but currently, as you can see at the end here, the water levels are rising and are expected to even rise higher. So this is what has been analyzed using satellite data with the Tahiti website. So, as it was seen yesterday, Prof showed us, the surface area of Lake Turkana has greatly increased. So, as you can see
varied other buildings. So the trends are increasing with each coming year. So, and exactly what is causing this is now an option that gives us to do more study and gives us that opportunity. So that is the surface area of the Baringo. It started at 2015, it was at 191 kilometers square, and it's currently at 220 kilometers. And this is even increasing as we are speaking. So the other lake is Lake Victoria. Now with Lake Victoria, a lot of studies have been done there. So there was established a baseline on which they knew that this is the level, the normal level of Lake Victoria. But currently, as we move towards 2022, you can see that the level from the lake. So this is the baseline, and these are the sheets with the levels, the water level of the lake. So as we are at 2021, this is the level of the lake. And we are expecting to see more and more increase in Lake Victoria. So on the Kenyan side, Kenya covered around 4,200, that is what has been estimated, around 4,200 kilometers square. But currently, we are at around 4,900 kilometers square. As we know, there are some islands you can see in Lake Victoria here, other than there are some islands that were present here back in 2013. But in 2021, the islands have been fully submerged. So it's up to us now to do a study and establish exactly what is the increase and what can we do and involve the authorities in this. So for me to conclude, I'm going to say that the water level in Kenyan lakes, not only in the Rift Valley, but generally in the country, are increasing. So in this work, we are now looking to establish the changes in this lake. So this is a study that we are now starting and are going to look for more data, which I'm sure the professor is going to assist us in. And now the future work will be to investigate this process. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Anne. Our next presenter is Mr. Yakov from
Check 1 2. 1 2.
Good afternoon.
One two. 1 2.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Enoch Ayako from Kenya Water Institute Kisumu campus. I'm a lecturer there, and I'm a trainer in geospatial information systems and remote sensing. My presentation is about supporting community water supply systems to map the infrastructure and to reduce non-revenue water. So my project is motivated by the fact that community water supplies, those ones in the rural area, are really struggling. They are incapacitated by low budgets and infrastructural inefficiencies. So non-revenue water is a very, very big problem for those small CBOs that are supplying water in rural areas. Remember, they have very little budget, and they cannot be able to sustain some of these cloud-based technologies that are, like for example, the likes of Esri. They're not providing open source tools. So it's a very big challenge for small rural water supply systems or schemes to be able to harness that technology. So they're very expensive. So for me, I'm proposing the use of open source softwares, which I'm going to show you there, how you can use those open source softwares to map your water utility infrastructures and match them with the field data that you collect from either using GPS or ODK. ODK is Open Data Kit. So we have a number of ODKs. For example, of course, that is, I'm suggesting a simple GIS for managing assets and revenue water, especially for those small rural supply water, small rural water supply companies or water services providers that do not have the financial muscle. Like, for example, we are told that Water and Water, they are one of the best, Kiwasco. But here I'm looking for those fledgling water services providers. How can they harness these open GIS tools? For example, like QGIS. How can they use QGIS, which is freely provided? How can they be able to use Kobo Toolbox, which is an open source tool? It's used by researchers. It's used by, yes. Of course, this is my main objective. And so these are some of the tools that I'm talking about. For example, QGIS is an open source. What do I mean by an open source? It is something that you are able to use, re-edit. You can, for example, if you're good at programming, for example, Python, you can even create your own plugins. For those who are good in programming, you can create your own plugin and integrate it within QGIS. So we also have Copernicus products by this organization called ESA. They provide a range of satellite and high resolution data which you can overlay with the Kobo Toolbox data that I will show you how to use it. So of course you can be able to use Google Earth. Google Earth is an open source, but if you need some additional services from them, they can be able to charge you at a cost. But it is semi-free, semi-open. So we have this Kobo Toolbox, which is used for humanitarian aid, education, and research for data collection. So this is a sample graphical user interface of Kobo Toolbox. For example, when you want to design, for example, when you want to design maybe a sample questionnaire to map whatever you want to map in the field there, you can use this Kobo Toolbox because this Kobo Toolbox has some geospatial capabilities. For example, you can be able to see if you don't have a GPS like for Mr. Simons, you can use a GPS, GTREX, or even Jamin and key in if you want high resolution data. But if you do not have, for example, for those rural CBOs or rural water supply schemes, you can use this interface within Kobo Toolbox. Because if you click, for example, if you can be able to locate where your asset is, for example, in Hombe or Park Road, you just click here and it will capture your coordinates exactly. Or you can use your, if you don't know how to use this Kobo Toolbox, you can just use a random. You can go to Google Play and use any open GIS. There are so many mobile-based GPS which you can key in those information, including that. But this one is capable of capturing the altitude, but the accuracy is not that good. But why am I saying it's better to have a GIS system rather than struggling without you're struggling. But now, of course, the accuracy is usually about 2 meters or 3 meters, but it's good for a start. So this kind of information you can take, for example, you want to take an information about valve, just capture all those things. Then, of course, you can take a photograph. If you click on this link, it will trigger you to take photograph of whatever it was valve. You can capture its condition. You'll be able to record here. For example, borehole and so many others. So this is the sample questionnaire that you can formulate, and depending on the user needs of your client. Then once you have that, of course, what I'm saying here, this is a summary workflow that any person who has IT knowledge or who can just be trained simply using this workflow, he can be able to generate a simple GIS. So what we are saying is, first of all, before you deploy your Kobo Toolbox, you must be able to know what is termed as GIS user needs assessment. What do you need to capture in your Kobo Toolbox? Of course, you have things like the storage tanks, valve hydrants, meters, And even that billing that you have, that billing meter, that document, you can even capture it here. So what we need in the end is a simple atlas or a wall map. It can be both digital or hard copy. So that is what I'm trying to say. Then the source evaluation is also very important. So once you have this attribute data, you can be able to do what? You can be able to use it to capture the right information, and maybe because you have that background map, you can be able to also identify the optimal route in which you can be able to go through and sample your data correctly. Then, of course, this is the kind of information that you need to capture. It's just a sample information. For example, this is water storage facilities. So you need in your Kobo toolbox to design it that way. The source ID, GPS or location, this is very important. And I've said Kobo toolbox can capture this information automatically. Or you can use, if you want high accuracy information, you can walk along with your GPX jamming or whatever Mr. Willis was presenting there, and key in that questionnaire. So your interest is to capture that data, which we will combine it with the S3 shapefiles. Yeah, so one thing that in as much as people think that S3 is, you have to buy it, but they have what is called free S3 shapefiles. They are both used in QGIS, and so that is the only product that I think S3 is giving for free, the S3 shapefiles. So S3 shapefile is a database where you can be able to store alongside that spatial or that data that you collect from. So this is a summary of the, a summary of the workflow. Then, of course, those are the outputs. So what you need this data, what are you capturing? What are you trying to capture? So the data that you are capturing using the Kobo toolbox is what you will use in managing your district metered areas and for water management purposes. So understanding the condition of water distribution is key in minimizing water losses, because it will help you in scheduling your repairs, understanding the location of those and their conditions that you captured. Then, of course, this is a sample district metered area that I developed using S3 shapefiles. So a shapefile is like a vector file, and it contains some of those attribute data, where you can be able to use the vector and raster analysis to, for example, you can be able to calculate the size of, the length of the pipes. You can be able to calculate number of meters in your area, number of joints, because those things you capture them using Kobo toolbox. So you can be able to do a significant number of spatial analysis using that. So this is the data that I captured using Kobo toolbox. Of course, it's carrying everything. This is just a data that needs to be cleaned. So data cleaning is also an important element here. So once you've captured it with Kobo toolbox, these ones were captured using the Kobo toolbox. Because, for example, students who want to go in the field there, or let me say the CBOs, they don't have financial muscle. So they can use Kobo toolbox for free to collect the GPS coordinates and join them with their spatial data. So this is what I collected from Kobo toolbox. So it can tell you how powerful Kobo toolbox is. Then, of course, this is what we were trying to do with our students at the campus, trying to create zones, the DMS, but we were trying to do this at our school level. So this is the point features that were captured using Kobo toolbox. These are the zones that we created, district metered area. You can be able to know whatever types of asset you have in a different type of zone. Of course, there is a CAD file that I didn't join here. So if I join with CAD files, I'm able to use this querying tool. If I use this, I click on this. If you click here and click here, it will be able to tell you that information. For example, the ID, the type of that infrastructure that you mapped, location, manufacturer, latitude, longitude, and many other things, depending on what you captured using Kobo toolbox. So you can be able to appreciate how these open source tools are critical in management of district metered areas and non-revenue water management. So the reason why I'm saying this app is important, you can be able to do a number of spatial analysis. Huh? Yeah, because this shapefile store your spatial information, you can be able to also combine it with billing information. So I'm concluding by saying that efficient data collection and cleaning is very important for those CBOs. These are things that you can train the CBOs to do and manage them. You don't need to rely on very expensive GIS tools and remote sensing tools. So with these, our CBOs can be able to reduce their non-revenue water and be able to support sustainable rural economies, because water is very important. So I want to thank you for listening, and if you could be having any question on how to deploy Kobo Toolbox and how to do spatial analysis, you can always come for KW. We do what is called utility mapping training and many other trainings in GIS. So feel free to visit our campus in Kisumu or this institute. We'll be able to give you tailored information. So I want to thank you for listening to me once again. So that is the...
Thank you very much for that. Our next presenter is from Kenya Water Institute, Mr. David Simon. Then Erasmus Maina, you give it next.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you. So in this presentation, I want to give you a brief overview of how we can use GIS and Earth observation for flood modeling. And this will be based on a research project that I did for my master's program. That was in the University of Twente in the Netherlands. So the topic is an analysis levels in the upstream end. And then the frequency and intensity of rainfall events are expected also to increase, because right now we have a lot of climate change issues where we have extreme rain events. So how do we mitigate these floods when you have extreme rain events? We can use GIS to forecast and do some flood modeling. So in this research, the Voltabik, which is a river, resilience to flooding during extreme rainfall is assessed. So that's what I was doing in the research. And I was using a model called LISEM, where LISEM stands for Limburg Soil Erosion Model. So in the picture, I'm showing a rainfall gauge, water rainfall gauging station which we had installed close to the farm. And then this is a situation after a rainfall close to the river. And this way we are collecting the water levels for the river. So what were the objectives of the study? So the main objective of this research was to assess the resilience of the Voltabik to flooding during extreme rain events by assessing the catchment's rainfall runoff production and mapping the flood extents and depths. So we were more interested in mapping the flood extents and how deep these floods are going to be. And to attain this, I did the 4 steps to attain those, the 4 objectives to attain that big objective. So the first one was to design an application of the Limburg soil erosion for the Voltabik by parameterization, the stream cross-section and extreme rain event. So that means we need to actually try to quantify what will be the worst maybe storm that can happen after 10 years, after 2 years. And to do this, we had to design some storm events based on data which we had already collected from the rainfall gauging stations. And then number 4, after doing all that, we generated flood maps of extreme rain events for dry, wet, saturated soil conditions. So we are looking at it in 3 ways. When the soil is totally dry, what will be the flood extents? When the soil is maybe wet, what will be the extent? So those were the study area and data sets. We had a DEM, then using the DEM, we generate the catchment map, and then we also had rainfall information from 1975 up to 2015. So spatial data sets that we used, for the Limburg soil erosion, you need 5 key data sets: soils, land use, the DEM, and then you also have water levels that you need to input into the model. So these are the in situ measurements that we are using. And in this case, this is the storm event that I used for model calibration, and then a different storm event for model validation, because models are wrong. All models are wrong, but is it reliable for use? So to show how reliable your model is, you have to do a calibration and validation. And then we also had soil moisture measurements. So the flood modeling, I'll not go deep into this because I know, because of time, maybe after it, if you have questions, you can come and then I'll explain what those are. But this is basically the design storm that I was designing for. Rainfall that can occur in 2 times per year, after 2 years, after 10 years, and after 50 years. And these were the rainfall depths that we were able to generate for those extreme rain events. So the methodology also, this is the method that I used, where you have your input maps, and then you write a Python programming to process these input maps to generate the input maps for the model. So basically the same model uses almost 40 input maps. So you cannot analyze these maps one by one. So we use an application called PC Raster that uses Python programming. And then after doing all that, we input the in situ measurements as a forcing for the model, and then we generate flood maps, and you actually draw conclusions from the results. So these are the results for my model calibration, where we're trying to simulate. So the dark line is the actual river measurement. And then the other dotted lines are the calibrated results from the model. So what we're doing, we are trying to show, to simulate the river flow as accurately as possible. So we did a model calibration and 14 runs, and I got a result which is acceptable using some calibration factors that we use. Then the validation results, that is what I got, and then I also did a sensitivity analysis. So these are the flood maps that we generated from the result. This is for when the soil is totally dry. This is the river channel, and then these are the flood extents that we generate for the different extreme rain events. This is a rain event that occurs twice in a year, after 2 years, after 10 years, and after 50 years. So these are the flood extents from 0 to 1.25 meters, and these are the simulated results for dry soil conditions. And then those are the simulated results for wet soil conditions and for saturated soil conditions. So you can see in saturated soil conditions, an extreme rain event of 50 years, you get a flooding extent that spills over a wider area. So conclusions. So based on the results, each storm event generates runoff differently. You can see the flood extents were different for each event. And then from the results, I also found out that the
soil conductivity and soil moisture are sensitive parameters. So that means you have to accurately parameterize these two parameters for you to get reliable results. And then the same is not sensitive to Manning's channel. So Manning's channel is simply the roughness of the river channel. And then basically here, I'm just trying to show you that this model has been used in Uganda and Rwanda, which are neighboring countries, and therefore it can also be applied here in Kenya for flood modeling. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Our next presenter is Erastus Pina. You see him? Erastus? Okay. So you'll exactly take 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Because by 2:30 we have to wind up. So Joel, you must take 3 minutes. If it takes 5, you take 3. Yeah.
So I will start. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Erastus Maina. I come from Nakuru County, work with Nakuru Water and Sanitation Company, and many have discussed about data, modeling issues, but for me, what I'm going to present is about visualization on how now you share this information with others. And my presentation will focus on the open source packages that are available out there that we can leverage. It's true that also it has been mentioned that technology is changing, and with these changes, nobody wants to be left behind. And also, with these changes also comes other implication in play. So, cost one being of it, and my presentation mostly focuses on those, especially the WSPs, the water utilities that are struggling to come up with a system that can be shared widely. We have issues. So as the IT tried to display my presentation, I still... Yes? I can... Yes, but some graphicals. I have some... Okay. So with these changes in technologies and the cost implication, most utilities are found in places where they cannot be able to have a system that they can be able to share with the management. This data is stored in their local machines or in some local servers that if somebody is not around, this data cannot be accessed, cannot be visualized also. Yeah, so my focus is on an open source package called WizMap under the OGL. And with this, it works with the open source mapping software that is QGIS. And with this QGIS, you configure your file. It has a very simple methodology. You configure your file in QGIS. Yeah, there it is. So I think we can go to the next slide. Yes, and just to give a scenario of where this is coming from, looking at even the WASTRED, the merge data that is out there, they had to bring a consultant to do this work, to have a system in play. Most WSP are struggling even to pay their salaries. And also many other institutions and companies are trying to come up with a system that can be used to share this data. With this, kind of solution that I'm presenting here, something that will enable one to be able, anybody can be able to update as long as they have access. They have been granted the rights. Next slide. Yes, as long as they have been granted the rights. And the workflow is quite simple. You have the server side, then you have your desktop application, that is the QGIS, which is still open source. Then you have your browser. All you need is an internet connection. Once you have your data in your database, now you can load it on your QGIS, do your configuration, make a nice map, do the styling. After the styling, post it on the server side on the QGIS server. Also, we are not going to use these other commercial servers, so we are going to use QGIS server for publishing purposes. And with this kind of setup, on your browser, you will be able to access your data the way you presented it, the styling that you did. The rendering is still the same as in your presentation. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, and the goodness with this kind of setup is that you are at a point where you can be able to set various restrictions. You can grant access to those that need access, those who need rights to do the edits, those who need the rights to just to view. You can do this on your as an admin. Next slide. Next slide. So on the QGIS desktop, you just download a plugin, the RISMAP plugin. You do the configuration, you set up your map, and on the browser side, you are going to have a very nice, a very beautiful web application where you'll be able to visualize your projects from what you can see. It's a very, but open source, free of charge. All you need is some very simple skills to do this, and with more advanced programming skills, which are not needed for you to arrive at this. With more, you can be able to customize this more further to suit to your institution, or even add logos and all what you need. Even change the styling. Next slide. And many have talked about insight using this data. There's no way you can be able to have this insight, you cannot be able to see what is being presented. So with this kind of visualization, it provides tools to do simple analysis. You can do graph representation. I've stated that the styling that you're going to use on your environment, the desktop environment, will still the same styling that will be rendered on your website. Next slide. And the goodness is also, you can be able to download this data. You can share in various file formats. You can share the link to a specific file. And just to mention, some advantages of this kind of solution is that the map will free render exactly the way it was in your preparation. How you usually do your desktop application, it will come exactly the same way on the website. Also, the cartographic application editor, you can also do the edits on the website as long as you have the access, the rights to do that. Also, with some skills in as a developer also, you can add more analytics, more analysis to your on the website, which can be shared widely with others. Just to think of the limitation of all this, all you need is more skills, but everything else on cost, it can be narrowed to comparing to the commercial softwares we have out there. My presentation was simple as that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any question?
No, they'll answer later. For you.
Yeah, maybe before Joel presents, myself, I also had a paper, and mine will be very brief. It was, there's something that I did on application of GIS in EI processes. Basically, this is a technique that majority of environmental experts, very few have been including this technique. Sure. Good. So, John, prepare, I'll take about 3 or 5 minutes. So, just as stated, yeah, the role of course, GIS in environmental impact assessment processes. During these stages of EIA, there are quite a number of stages, and I realized that during my study, that most of the practitioners, especially the environmentalists and even individuals, and even consultancy firms who do environmental impact assessment, they do not engage the technique, the GIS technique. The GIS technique, I realized from the questionnaires and even the experts, or the environmental experts that do carry out this activity, it was used especially at the screening stage where the initial data and the baseline data was being acquired. So it was at this point that these attributes are picked by using either those techniques we have, even the GPS. So at this point, the GIS can be employed, and you collect this data, where later they'll be integrated to form some quality results. So through this, you really add more value to the processes, especially when you are taking the EIA processes. Initially, this has not been something that has been done, and I did give an introduction. Of course, it is a tool that can integrate, analyze, and display spatial attributes, especially on both socioeconomic and environmental data. And remember, these are some of the issues that when you are doing EIA, you pick at. So if GIS can do that kind of work, why don't we deploy it? Other than that, on those stages, it can also be used to generate, store, display thematic information relative to the storage. We also have the vulnerability and sensitivity of those areas that you will be doing, or you will be carrying out this kind of activity. So data preparation, there will also be data modeling, and also when you'll be doing the forecasting or the impact forecasting, this is the time you can manipulate this data that you have collected from the screening stage, so that you see what will happen if this and this happens. So, except maybe in public participation, we may not use it, but it was also involved during this kind of exercise. However, there are quite a number of variables, especially during the screening stage, which often have complex interrelationships and vary from time, space, and GIS was realized as one of the important tools that could be used to analyze this kind of intercomplex or complex variables. Other than that, as I said earlier, the stages that GIS can be applied are screening, during scoping, and also modeling. Then lastly, the impact focus can also be used. You can also use GIS to do this. The EIS stage, that is the impact identification, can also benefit from GIS operations, especially during the overlay integration of these attributes that we collected initially from the screening processes. Advantages, of course, of using this, there were quite a number of using GIS, especially during these, the 3 stages during environmental impact assessment by these experts. The GIS in itself had the ability to perform, of course, spatial analysis and modeling, which was not done initially by the initial or the norm that has been using the questionnaires. The GIS also provided a clearer or more presentable results when it was used to gather this kind of information. Another way was updating. The GIS gave us that room of updating the new data and changing the information, especially when we are now focusing or getting a focus on what would happen
to this when this happens to this. So that kind of focus, GIS would really allow us to manipulate this information so that we get new results. Further to that, of course, using GIS, maybe why other experts on environment have been trying to evade, it's time consuming and also costly to implement. The other part was the experts. Generally, of course, as you can see from all the presentations, the experts, this is something that we need really to start instilling, especially from the junior school up to the highest level where we are now. So with that kind of giving or training, the students up to the PhD levels, they become experts and they can really involve GIS technique in carrying out these environmental investigations. The other concern was, of course, lack of data, which most desirable spatial and temporal scales. So how to integrate these layers of information with varying resolution and accuracy was quite a problem, especially when some data are obtained of a much finer resolution than the other data. So trying to integrate them, it becomes a problem. The other one was awareness of the GIS, just as I've said. Not all the practitioners and environmental experts are aware of this GIS or tool that it can be used in environmental impact assessment. So if we can create awareness that advantages of this are this, as much as the cost of putting it up is a little bit high, it really gives a more detailed report, especially on the impact, environmental impact assessment. So conclusions, of course, the study found out that currently GIS is not being used at all EIS stages, especially during the discussion, that is the public participation. So you can use it at screening, scoping. You may not use it at the public participation stage. The result, it has come out so well. The paper also shown that GIS are already extensively used in EI because the ability to analyze and present spatial data successfully. However, the full power of this system has not been fully explored due to the difficulties associated with the lack of modeling specifically for EI and non-availability of digital data that can be used, especially maybe off-shelf. If you can get data, you buy and maybe try to analyze using the GIS. So thank you. So Joel. This is our last presentation before we go for lunch. So let's give him time. Just proceed.
Now, my name is Joel and I'm doing a presentation on how we used GIS at Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company. Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company is a company which is located. The education aspect is precise. Normally we use handheld GPS devices as well as mobile phones at Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company. And our mobile phones have applications such as GPS Essentials as well as Kobo Collect. Next. On data analysis, storage, and management at Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company, we use a freeware software, which is QGIS, formerly known as Quantum GIS. It is effective, and it allows us as experts to assess the quality of data that has been collected by the field team before dispensing the same to our staff and consumers and other stakeholders. Next. This is a map. It just shows the customers that we've managed to map at Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company. All of our customers have been mapped. We have approximately 17,800 customers correctly mapped. Next. Now, when it comes to designing our infrastructure at Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company, we have employed the use of Earth observation before designing our infrastructure, just to make sure that everything goes on perfectly well. Now on this, we have been using Google Earth Engine to extract elevation data, which in turn helps us to design elevation profiles for pipelines and sewer lines. Now next slide. This is an example of an elevation profile which was extracted from Google Earth. This is a tool that you can access from Google Earth, and it shows a line. The starting point for this line was this point, and it was ending here. And now we have the elevation profile showing you an overview of how the terrain looks like on ground. And so you are able to design your infrastructure to know, especially for gravity flow pipelines, you'll be able to tell how your system will flow. This is also important when it comes to sewer lines, because you'll be able to know the depth of manholes that you intend to install prior installation. Now, the use of Google, other observation skills at Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company has also enabled us to study the spatial distribution for demographics, and this enables us to know where our customers are, and it has been an aspect that has helped us to conduct proper feasibility studies before carrying out a particular project. Next. So on data dispensation, this is where we share our data. This is where we visualize our data after collecting and after going through that data as experts, and now having the final output. This is where our data is accessible to our staff, to our consumers, and also our stakeholders. Next. This is another map indicating our pipelines. These are the pipelines at Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company. It is very important for the operations and maintenance team guys, because they will be able to know the size of pipeline whenever they are. Next slide. It's a sewer network system. Not much to say about this. It's just like the previous maps. Next. Now, on managing our water infrastructure, we have an aspect of indicating the age and status of our infrastructure. This especially comes on our pipelines. We have a way of indicating when a particular pipeline was installed, and this information helps us to know when to repair a particular pipeline or to rehabilitate any other infrastructure. Next slide. GIS in NRW management, we have been actively mapping leaks, bursts, illegal connections, and as well as providing DMAs for our NRW team. We have demarcated them clearly. Next one. As part of our J6P project, NAWASCO has been involved. NAWASCO was involved in J6 project. This was Solio Water project, which was purely based on GIS, right from the inception to implementation up to conclusion. Now next slide. This was Solio, the pipeline layouts. It was based on GIS. We did all the layout. We have 7 villages at Solio, and we did the pipeline reticulation layout for the project. Next one. These are our customers. Now this was after we did the pipeline. Then customers came later and we connected them to their individual meters and we mapped the meters, all of them. Next one. Accessibility. Now our GIS data is accessible to our staff, consumers,
as well as any other stakeholder and any other interested party. Now the following links, you can click on one and no, actually this is good. Now this is our system. You already clicked on one link. This is our GIS system. The cluster accounts, if you try to zoom in, you'll find that we have individual accounts. Let's try to zoom in anywhere. Now the more you zoom in again. Once you zoom in, you'll be able to see our individual accounts. The blue lines are our pipelines. Now, the other one is for Solio Water Project. Again, it's what I had screenshotted on my presentation. Sir, Solio Water. Refresh. This is Solio. We have the 7 villages, the ones I had shown you, the pipeline layouts. We have the blue lines as the pipelines, and we have the dots as the customers for Solio. Now go back to the presentation I finished. So that is how we have been using GIS at Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company. That is not the only things that we have mapped at Nanyuki Water. We have mapped all our assets. That was just an overview of what was important for this particular session. We have the benefits of GIS. You will look at that. And we have the last slide. We have the challenges that we face. Firstly, it is costly, and also it is time consuming. And that was my presentation. Thank you for your time and patience.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. Yes. Thank you for your presentation on the Nyeri water. I think we have come, Nanyuki, sorry. I think we have come to an end of our presentations today. And I want to thank each and every person who has made it or made it to this Kenya Water Institute Geospatial Symposium. I want to make an announcement. For those who have not taken lunch, lunch is just across, so you'll get your meal card and have lunch. From the lunch, we'll head to the main conference hall upstairs, where we will have a closing ceremony. So certificates will be issued to those who will be successful or who are successful. So more details, I think, will be explained in the hall. Otherwise, I want to thank you, and let's give ourselves a clap. So thank you.